social media. And I think that I must add my 2 cents to it. Listen, let's get serious as a country. We like this country, we know be serious. Somebody comes to Ghana, understood. He's a streamer. He's putting Ghana on the global map. He's doing whatever. Then the person comes to Ghana for a day or 2, and then you shove the Ghanaian passport into the person's hands. When you're serious,
All right. Welcome to This Week in Africa, your weekly live stream where we talk about all things Africa, news, and what is going on around the continent that is important to the Pan-Africans living on the continent and around the world. Today, we're going to be talking about the fact that iSHOWSPEED has Ghanaian citizenship, or will be granted Ghanaian citizenship after just 24 hours in Ghana. We'll be talking about Khaby Lame's $900 million deal and what that means for content creators. We will also be talking, he's obviously an African content creator living in Italy. We will also be talking about ELHAN OMAR being attacked recently and the news surrounding that. We'll talk about the new satellites that the AES will be launching, Mali taking control of its gold, and we will talk about some of the other geopolitical shifts happening around the continent. But before we get into today's news, we'll start with some introductions, and we'll get back into that video that you just saw in the beginning. So before I introduce myself, I'll turn it over to our co-host for her introduction.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gloria Ayo. I am the creator of Diaspora Station. Yeah, there's a change there. But yeah, very happy to be back. Oh, what I basically do is, do everything I can to connect Africans throughout the diaspora through news, history, and culture. And one of such platforms is none other than This Week in Africa with the Joe Hotagwa. So very happy to be back.
Yes, and I am Joe Hotagwa, founder of Authentic African Media. Our goal is to help people do one of 3 things: visit, move, and invest in Africa. We do that through news, sharing stories of those who live on the continent, who have businesses, those who've made the move, so you can learn from others what to do and what not to do. So, top story today, as mentioned earlier, Ghana's Minister of Foreign Affairs has issued a statement that the country will be granting iSHOWSPEED a Ghanaian passport. This comes after he completed his Africa tour and had a positive experience in Ghana. He shared that traveling Africa has been a life-changing experience. It brought many people to tears, including his father. And there are some interesting responses around the continent. We will have one example of a news personality at GH1's news station in Ghana, and then we'll have some commentary on the other side. So I'll get back to her commentary, and then we will give you our thoughts.
When you're serious, Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa, you were somebody that we had high expectations of. You shove a Ghanaian passport into the hands of somebody who comes, who is streaming, who is embarking on his own personal thing. Okay, they're coming to jump on our jollof, coming to jump on our Black Star Square. What has it done to our GDP? What has it added to our economy? Woody Maya has been putting Ghana on the map globally. Have you seen that he's gone to America and the Americans have shoved him an American passport? Even Nigeria, has Nigeria given him a passport? Too much. You've given him a Ghanaian passport. For what achievement? What has he done for Ghana? That he's come to sit on our jollof. And the moment he steps on the jollof and walks away, Ghanaians jump on that jollof and eat from jollof that he sat on. When you're serious, with the greatest of respect, let's put some value on our passport. Let's put some value on this country.
All right, I will leave it there. So, Gloria, your thoughts. I have a lot of thoughts, but I'd like to hear from you first, and then I'll give my thoughts on what she just said.
Okay, first of all, I did wonder what was going to happen to all that jollof after he flew in there and did the backflip, and I was like, that's a lot. Are people going to eat that? Because I don't like food wasting, but I guess I assumed it would kind of go down that way, and that really could have happened in any part of the world. It's food, you know what I mean? People don't care. Scrape off the top and dig in, okay? I would have grabbed me a plate too. But in all seriousness, though, I thought shoved was a strong word, but I also understood the context in that they literally just offered it to him. Do you know what I mean? So I understand her concern, and I do have to commend her for being so bold, because this is a station you mentioned is based in Ghana. And to be able to speak truth to power so boldly is commendable. We obviously do the same thing on this platform. And I love to see when people in legacy media or traditional media are still bold enough to speak truth to power. Now, that said, of course, it's a very controversial thing for obvious reasons. And I do want to point out that a lot of things, for instance, like when iSHOWSPEED was in Nigeria, you know, Joe and I had this conversation where I said, you know, because we had talked about Mr. Beast, I think it was last week as well. Yeah. We had mentioned Mr. Beast and how, you know, he came to Africa, fixed all this infrastructure that the government had neglected to fix. And for me, it was, you know, I wish he had found a balance, but I believe he had good intentions. And I wondered the same thing about iSHOWSPEED, you know, specifically when it was in Nigeria, and it was like a circus over there. You know, we described it as chaos, and I said I embraced the chaos. But of course, we don't want that to be the only thing that came out of Nigeria, because we didn't have, you know, we didn't showcase our culture like Ghana, Ivory Coast, Benin, and all these wonderful countries have done. It was just, you know, we could have offered way more. But in fairness to iSHOWSPEED, that it's what they present him that he goes with. Do you get what I'm saying? And Ghana was able to present all this culture and all this beauty to him. And that was what he was able to showcase to the world. Could his team have maybe done better in terms of their research and, you know, controlled where he could have gone? Absolutely. But back to Ghana. You know, one thing I also want to add is that during the stream, I believe Speed actually revealed that his mother is of Ghanaian descent. Yes. So that was, I guess, what gave the legal hook for the government to fast track his application. And then there was a traditional naming ceremony in the Eastern region where he was draped in kente cloth and given a Ghanaian name, Barima. So I'm like, okay, Kofi. You know, that was pretty interesting. And to be fair, and I don't know if this is necessarily a good or bad thing. I guess it depends on your opinion or your thoughts on it. The government giving citizenship to an influencer with over 50 million YouTube subscribers, who was recently named most influential creator of 2025 by Rolling Stone, is actually a calculated marketing win. It's great for business. It's great for the optics. I don't agree that Speed hasn't contributed to the GDP. I think that's very relative. One thing I do know is that he showcased Ghana, and Joe, you were referencing the Google search of air. I don't know if you'll get to that, but he definitely had Ghana in the news a lot. These things are great for tourism. These are things that will garner a lot of interest. So I don't think, you know, I don't agree that he has contributed nothing to that. No, he has contributed a whole lot to a lot of countries that he did tour. But very quickly, just to wrap up, it's beautiful that iSHOWSPEED was able to, in his own way, counter global stereotypes of, you know, poverty. He's shown our modern infrastructure. He's shown our vibrant culture to a massive Gen Z audience. And of course, what also makes this weird is awkward is the fact that he was in Ghana for a very short time, and for the government to be like, oh, here, take the citizenship. You know, it feels transactional and performative, especially when thousands of other diaspora members have faced years of hurdles just to secure the same rights. But I think, again, I'm not going to blame iShow for however anything went. While some think it's a slap in the face, you know, when you just take a celebrity and give them something, I absolutely understand where they're coming from, but I also think there's something to also gain from it. I don't know. That's my thought on it. Doing my best.
All great points. Yeah, I mean, so, and two things can be true, right? So real quick anecdote from my experience living in Ghana and working in Ghana. I worked with a gentleman, and as I told Gloria offline, who was Ghanaian and Nigerian. And to her point, she mentions further on in that video that there are many people in Ghana looking to get citizenship and don't currently have it. So he was of Ghanaian and Nigerian descent. He has a Nigerian name. He was born in Nigeria, but he moved to Ghana when he was a child. And he, unfortunately, has not yet gotten Ghanaian citizenship. And I remember him talking to me about this, and I didn't ask all the details of his circumstance, so I don't know what he's gone through to try to achieve citizenship in Ghana. He told me he believed his challenge getting Ghanaian citizenship was the fact that he was born in Nigeria and he has a Nigerian name. That's what he would say to me. So speaking to her point about the challenges for those trying to get citizenship, as Gloria just posted today, one of the folks here has says that she has since apologized, and I think that's one of the things that it speaks to making snap judgments without all of the details. I do want to quickly play something now. This is anecdotal. This is from iSHOWSPEED himself. But to your point earlier, when you were asking about his citizenship or his family lineage, he has said previously that his uncle was a king of one of the tribes in Ghana. A lot of people said he was a liar, but this is what he had said previously.
North. We're going more north. North and north and north.
Yeah, I come from. I see you got a Ghana store.
Ghana? You from Ghana?
Nah.
Oh. Well, why you say that?
Cause I'm there to see what's up.
Oh, yeah. Nah, I got family in Ghana. That's why. Yeah. My uncle was the king of one of the tribes in Ghana.
Y'all actually tapping a lot. I don't know.
So now, of course, the comments were saying this was a lie, this is cap, et cetera, et cetera. But I do want to make it clear that if that is true, he does have lineage in Ghana. That's one. And when it comes to Ghanaian citizenship, one of the things that they do require is that one of your parents or even your grandparents, you can get citizenship through it. I think it's one parent. I don't think it needs to be both parents. But I think if one parent is Ghanaian, and definitely through your grandparents, you can get citizenship. I was there getting my non-citizenship ID card, my residency card, and I was there witnessing a person describing his grandparents and going through the process of getting citizenship. So that is one of the ways that you get it. Now, if what he said is not true, then it speaks to the fact that there are longer pathways to citizenship for most people. Now, in most countries, including Ghana, citizenship is granted through a process, through a legislative process. However, there are presidential now I can't even think of the word where presidents make a presidential decree, but the word I'm looking for is it'll come to me later. But basically, the president can decide who gets citizenship. You guys might remember that 500 people was 300 people plus 300 people. Sorry, it was about 500 people, yeah, in total under Akufo-Addo's administration, and around 150 or so under Mahama's first administration. And don't hold me to those specific numbers, but large numbers of folks got citizenship in those time periods, and that's in an 8 plus a 4. That's a 12-year time frame. Close to 700 people have gotten citizenship who were of African descent, but who haven't recently been in Ghana, don't have Ghanaian parents or grandparents from Ghana. And so this has already happened to those who have been shown to be making a positive contribution to Ghana. A number of different things are listed on that process that those people were able to get citizenship. I will say there were other people who got citizenship who were, because they were part of a WhatsApp group or another group, they got citizenship. I met 2 people in my last trip this last December who got citizenship in Ghana before they had ever even visited Ghana for the first time. When they landed, they went through the process of the paperwork and they got citizenship. So to be outraged by iSHOWSPEED's potential citizenship, I think is a mistake. There are 2 things that can be true. There are other processes that should be improved for those who are in country and who've been working to get citizenship. But also I think it's useful in this sense because you want him to come back frequently, right? That's the goal. You see, and then the other point that you were saying, and then I had mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
it is hard to determine how much he has impacted the GDP of Ghana. What we do know, though, is there are a lot more eyeballs on the continent of Africa, and Ghana has been said by many people who've been watching the stream, W's for Ghana. Ghana won the tour, right? That's how people have been describing it, because today, the way everybody is it always has to be a competition. But so many people have been saying Ghana won the tour. So if they are saying that, you are already having a positive impact. To her point, Wodemaya has done a ton, and he has been recently given a diplomatic passport by Ghana so that he can travel around to other countries a lot more easily without having to get visas, because that's one of the challenges that he ran into throughout all of his travels in the last 5-6 years since he's been really moving around the continent, and then even around the Caribbean as well, and North America too. So my thoughts on this is, I'm glad that she apologized if that is the case, according to some of the folks. And I do think two things can be true. There are some challenges with the immigration system as it is today with the backlog. But that doesn't mean someone like iSHOWSPEED should not get at least consideration for citizenship based on whether it's lineage and or the contribution that he's made. I can tell you that I have had so many people send me messages about the fact that he was in Ghana and asking me if I was there, right? Are you in Ghana? Are you in Ghana? iSHOWSPEED is going to be going to Ghana. I'm talking about people who don't even consider going to Ghana ever. But the fact that they know that I've lived there and that I was just there in December, they are wondering if I'm there and I will be shooting content with him there. So he has definitely brought a ton of attention to the country and to the continent. And so I think that should be taken into consideration when people are thinking about whether or not to grant citizenship. Because at the end of the day, much of the criteria that's required can be checked off just by that 24 hours in country. Now, moving on to the next story. We don't want to spend too much time there, but we thought it was important to discuss that because her response is not the only response that was like that. There were people from around West Africa, content that I saw, just do one Google search. You can look on YouTube or Google. You'll find many people had many thoughts about whether or not he should have been granted citizenship. And there were a lot of negative comments on that. Now, yeah, so Jada's mentioning that iSHOWSPEED said he wanted to buy a house, or he may have said that. Look, it makes it a whole lot easier if he's a citizen, right? And so we will see, though, if he returns, how soon he returns, and what he does when he does. Okay, now moving on to the next story. There are lots of stories to review today, so we don't want to miss the rest of these. So Khaby Lame, the most followed creator on TikTok, has secured a groundbreaking deal, reportedly valued at between $900 and $945 million, without saying one word in those videos. He's a Senegalese-born, Italy-raised star, and he partnered with a company called Rich Parco Holdings in a landmark agreement that includes cash, equity, and the creation of an AI-powered digital twin. So that deal grants exclusive global rights to his brand and could generate billions in annual sales through content, virtual engagement, and co-branded products. From factory worker to digital icon, Khaby Lame's rise marks a turning point in the future of creator-led businesses. So we will play this video and we will have some commentary on the other side. First, let me bring us to here. All right.
And for our final story, is one of the most famous faces on the internet. And now, without saying a word, Senegal-born social media star Khaby Lame has secured a near $1 billion deal. Known for being the most expressive man on TikTok, Lame has just rocketed into the financial stratosphere. With his viral fame transforming into one of the largest business deals ever seen for an individual creator, this eye-watering $900 million deal has cemented Lame's status as a business titan. The transaction with Rich Sparkle Holdings has granted the company exclusive global rights to his brand for 3 years. Lame will not get the full sum up front. instead receiving a combination of cash and equity. This will make him a controlling shareholder in Rich Sparkle Holdings. While the $900 million figure seems huge, projections suggest the partnership could eventually generate $4 billion in annual sales. So the figures involved in this deal are unprecedented for an individual creator. But Khaby Lame will not be alone in his content. That's because AI is a huge part of how the African-born creator's brand will be commercialized. Let's break it down. Rich Sparkle Holdings plans a multi-pronged strategy to monetize Khaby Lame's brand to an industrial scale and will target the United States, Middle East, and Southeast Asia over the next 3 years. The deal authorizes the development of an AI-powered digital twin of the creator. And this avatar will be capable of a lot: generating multilingual content, hosting virtual live streams, and enabling 24/7 fan engagement using his voice, likeness, and mannerisms.
All right, so if you guys want to watch the rest of that, the link is in the description. But your initial thoughts on this deal: 3 years exclusive for AI generation, multi-language, multi-country. What are your thoughts?
Ching ching, get that bread. 900 million, that's like $1 billion, right? Man. But anyway, it is, I mean, that just shows you the power of this man. And for the stock of Rich Sparkle to actually, and that's the company that sold, that Lame sold his core operating company to, for their stock to soar up over 250%, shows you the power of this man. This is a human brand that's now commanding valuations that you would have thought would be for major Hollywood studios or global consumer goods companies. But Lame is doing his thing and getting that money. And instead of being paid per post, he's now sitting at the helm of a publicly traded ecosystem that owns the commercial rights to his brand for the next 3 years. And of course, there might be concerns around that. But the most disruptive element is the authorization of, I guess, this AI digital twin of Khaby Lame is going to be hyper realistic. But for the company, that is a major win, because now they're going to be, according to analysts, they could generate $4 billion in annual sales, because Khaby is 360 million plus followers strong. And this way they're able to get their product distribution, be it beauty. I mean, they're able to sell products off of this man's brand. And to the concerns, of course, people might think he's betting his entire personal brand. At the end of the day, isn't that what life is about? You take risks sometimes. I am actually very inspired by this, and I think a lot of people should be too. This was a man, as was pointed out, lost his factory job in Italy, and now he's become this billionaire adjacent stakeholder. It's the ultimate digital transformation story, and I am here for it. You go, Lame. Thank you. Thank you for representing us.
Yeah, and so my thoughts are this. My initial question when I first heard the story was, is he getting stake in the company that is buying this, right? So that's one. So he's getting stake. So does he get to benefit from the upside that they will get, the billions? Because there have been all kinds of stories about Silicon Valley executives who've said, I won't sell my company to you because if you're willing to pay $10 million for it, it must be worth $50 million. So in this case, they mentioned potentially they could potentially gain $4 billion in annualized revenue. Him being a shareholder and a major shareholder in the holding company means that he will benefit from that. So his shares that he gets will also then increase in value. He'll be able to sell that for cash, and he'll also be getting cash for it. And the most important part is it is for 3 years. And keep in mind, the man did not have to do much at all for these deals, right? He literally had to, first of all, he started getting a bunch of inbound, but all he had to do was see a video where somebody did something ridiculous to show a way to do something when there's another obvious, easier way to do it. And he would just do the obvious, easier way and just point like that. So to get $9 $100 million and a stake in an organization that stands to gain potentially $4 billion per year, I think is definitely a major win, especially where he only sold the exclusive rights for 3 years. And that means he doesn't have to create any more content, which I'm sure he doesn't want to anyway, right? I mean, he hasn't been doing that much work to create the content, but I mean, it was very smart what he's done. I mean, I don't want to take anything away from him, but my point is that the flip, you know, as people talk about when you flip money, I mean, this is like the biggest flip for the least amount of work that we might have seen in a long time. And so, yes, good for him. You know, capitalism rules the day once again, but it looks like he has some good lawyers and people on his side to help ensure that he maximized the profit from this, because we've heard so many stories of musicians, musical artists, and others being taken advantage of. But this is what happens when you have a large following. You can go to a company and you can negotiate as a joint partnership instead of negotiating from the standpoint of a weaker position. And this, by the way, is illustrative of what Africa could do if we operated as a one continent with international trade deals, because then you can have a seat at the table as an equal or even a superior, as opposed to being treated like a small nation and getting taken advantage of. So that's the way I see it. You know, and it looks like, look, it worked out well for him. So congratulations to him, a very young guy. I think he's under 30 years old. So what he does with that, we will watch. But those who are upset about this deal on his behalf, don't be. He will be just fine. He will be just fine. And it was only, as mentioned, it was only 3 years. So after 3 years, he gets it fully back, and he can do whatever he wants with it. He continue to work with this deal or not. One person says, be very careful with selling your image. What do a man profit to gain the world and lose his soul? Well, the question is, does he lose his soul, right? Does he lose his soul? I guess we'll have to find out. I mean, it depends on if he disagrees with what they are using his image for, right? Does he have a say in what they're using his image for? And does he agree with it? Because when people talk about losing a soul, that means you have to have a certain moral compass, and you have to have certain standards for what you're okay with and what you're not okay with. And if something will be done that you're not okay with, but you will allow it for money. We don't know that yet, right? We have no idea we haven't heard him speak, right? We have no idea what his belief systems are, what he cares about, what he doesn't care about. He probably does not care what they're going to use his image for. Let us just hope that it's used for good and positive. I mean, obviously it's for advertising, pushing products. So however you feel about that, you know, you can feel about it, but that's likely what it'll be. And that's what he was doing anyway. So we will see. We will see. Any thoughts on that comment? I'm sorry, I took over that comment.
Oh, I completely, just like, yeah, I'm also curious, and we'll see.
We will see. All right. So moving on to the next story. Obviously, we know we've talked a little bit about Minnesota and the Somali population there, and we also have mentioned that there is a congresswoman there by the name of ILHAN OMAR, and she was actually recently assaulted during a town hall meeting in Minneapolis. The incident occurred as she was criticizing the president's immigration policies, when a man rushed the stage and sprayed her with a liquid using a syringe. So security personnel did jump in, I think a little bit slowly, but a little bit after it had been sprayed, and they subdued him and arrested him. And from what I understand, he is being charged with third-degree assault. That is what he is going to be charged with, which seems a little light, but also he sprayed a liquid. We do not know what it is as of yet. They said it was a foul-smelling liquid. So we'll play this video and have some commentary on the other side.
We're moving on to Minnesota, which remains on edge after 2 deadly shootings by federal immigration agents. In this charged atmosphere, Democratic Representative ILHAN OMAR was assaulted during a town hall meeting. The incident unfolded on Tuesday night when she was speaking about President Trump's immigration policy. Video shows a man surging towards the congresswoman and spraying a liquid at her with a syringe. A security guard immediately intervened. Omar stepped back, then returned to the podium after a brief pause, determined that the event would continue. Police say she was not injured. Here's what unfolded.
ICE cannot be reformed. It cannot be rehabilitated. We must abolish ICE for good. And DHS Secretary Khaby Lame must resign or face impeachment. I don't know.
Oh my God. Oh my God, he sprayed something on her.
I need a napkin to know nothing. No, we will continue this. We're not gonna get away with it.
Well, the suspect was arrested on charges of third-degree assault, and forensic teams were called in to investigate.
Joe? Can't hear you.
Oh, your thoughts on that incident?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
Yes.
Well, someone said it was apple cider vinegar. Okay, I guess we all want to find out. They said it smelled. They could just get talking about how badly it smelled. On my page, I actually did a slow down version of it. I think you saw the video of this spray, going towards her chest. Of course, there have been a lot of reactions. Oh my goodness, my Facebook blew up with that video with all kinds of reactions. I haven't even gone in there to look, but I know it's going to be a lot of toxicity. And unfortunately, that is what the environment is now. This is where America is now, and I'm not here to necessarily condemn anyone. I'm not even trying to be political about this. But what happened to ILHAN OMAR in Minnesota only shows you how intense this racial and political tension in Minneapolis is. And of course, this is following the loss of life of Renee Good and Alex Pretty, and this spraying actually happened as she was calling for the abolition of ICE and Khaby Lame resigning, and the man actually yelled, "You must resign," and then sprayed. So I've seen a lot of mixed reactions. Some people think it was staged. Some people think she deserved it. Of course, other people think it was unfair. And some people even mentioned Charlie Kirk in the mix and talked about, whatever it's just such a scary world we're living in right now. I do not recognize this America. For it to spill globally is even more scary. I think during Trump's first term, it felt more American. I mean, there was some global spillage going on, but now it's like the entire world just has this air now. It's but what I always recommend is don't try to absorb too much of it. Just take things, sometimes do with it what you will, but you have to also do what you can to protect your mental space. But my conclusion on this is, no matter what happens, I will never support something like that happening to anyone, let alone somebody in power. Whether or not you think it was staged, I would never agree with the physical attack. It could have been way worse. Any form of physical attack, be it a spray, it could have been way worse. And I'm just glad she's safe. I am impressed at how bold she is. I don't know if you saw the video where she literally she was going to go pounce on the man, it seemed. But I'm not a fan of whatever that was. Not a fan of what happened to Charlie Kirk either. I think we can all disagree politically without things just getting to this level that it's gotten to.
Yeah, so my thoughts are, look, one, we're reporting on this because she is a migrant to the United States from the continent of Africa, and she was a refugee, right? And so we've been talking about Somalia and the Somali refugees, and she is an American citizen, obviously. So now, specifically as it pertains to this story, right? There is a lot of skepticism from those who feel like because it was light, right, and because of her response, people presume that this was staged. Just like there were other people who disagreed with the president of the United States, and some people feel like that was staged. I think my approach with these things are this. I always look at everything and I look for, I look at it through the lens of here's what we know now, and until I have proof otherwise, this is what we know, right? And by proof, I mean independent investigations by those who do not have a dog in the fight, right? And so as of right now, and even for the other attempted attacks on other Congress people and also all the way up to the president of the United States, as of right now, independent investigations have all come back saying that these were actual attempts, right? And they've looked at the psychologies of these individuals. So I will not walk away with skepticism on this. So what I will say is this. One of the questions I have is why the security isn't able to pick this up as someone does walk into a building. So the question is, do they do pat downs? And it is a sad place today that you have to ask that question at a town hall, right? You should be able to go into a town hall and to be able to address your representatives and communicate directly without having to get patted down or going through a metal detector. However, these high profile figures do need to have levels of protection in place and better protection than they have had. People going to people's homes and hitting them with a hammer, people shooting people at college campuses, people coming into a town hall and spraying a substance. They're all different degrees of violence, but all of them are unacceptable. And all of them, I think, could have been prevented and should have been prevented. So in my opinion, we are too far along with technology and skill set to allow something like this to happen. Now, to her response, she took a moment to gather herself. She got back up on stage, continued her speech. So whether you agree or disagree with her, we should all agree that this is not acceptable for her or folks who are on the opposite side of the aisle from her as well. I mean, all of it is bad and wrong, regardless of how you feel about her, her politics, her personal life, etc. So those are my thoughts there. We're just reporting on it because she is an African in Minnesota. And of course, we've been talking a lot about the Minnesota migrants and the situation that's happening there with ICE, etc. So that is why we discussed that particular story. Okay, moving on to the next story. So there's been a conversation about China cutting loans to Africa, even as exports to Africa grow. So First Post News reports that China's trade with Africa is rising, even as its lending slows. China's exports to Africa climbed to $225 billion in 2025, while Africa's exports to China were $123 billion in that same time frame. So the shift comes as Chinese firms look to new markets after the U.S.-China tariffs and a truce in October 2025, with Chinese goods to the United States still taxed at 48%, China is lending to Africa and doing more business on the continent of Africa. It peaked at nearly $29 billion in 2016, but it actually fell to $2.1 billion in 2024. Reports say China's funded 6 projects in 2024 and increasingly issuing loans in the yuan, which is China's currency, including in Kenya. So we will play this video and we'll have some commentary on the other side.
Our next story is about China and Africa. For years, Beijing has widened its footprint in Africa. It has built roads, ports, and railways and given out billions of dollars in loans. But now there's a shift. While Chinese goods are flooding African markets, Chinese loans are drying up. Tonight, we'll try to decode this trend. Is Beijing rethinking its Africa strategy, or is this just a new chapter of the old playbook? Let us start with the numbers. Look at the export figures of last year. China's exports to Africa jumped to $225 billion, but Africa's exports to China were just $123 billion, meaning Africa is buying a lot more from China than it's selling it. And why have Chinese exports surged? Well, one reason is Donald Trump's tariffs. Last year, the US president slapped high tariffs on China. Beijing retaliated with its own tariffs on US goods. This led to a trade war. And these are the world's two biggest economies. Finally, they had a truce in October 2025. As of today, Chinese goods to America are taxed at 48%. And despite the truce, Chinese firms are under pressure. They don't want a repeat of last year. They don't like this uncertainty, so they're looking for other export markets. Enter Africa. It's a huge market with over 1.5 billion people. And it has a growing demand for manufactured goods, goods like consumer products and industrial equipment. Many African countries do not produce things locally or on a large scale. So China is filling that gap. And that's how exports are rising. But like I said, Chinese loans are also shrinking. For years, Beijing has been a major lender in the continent. A lot of countries figured out too late that this was a debt trap. And even when they did figure it out, they needed money for developmental projects. So they kept going back to the loan shark called China. For example, in 2016, China's lending to Africa peaked at nearly $29 billion. This was driven by Xi Jinping's Belt and Road Initiative. But by 2024, the picture had changed significantly. Chinese lending to African countries fell to $2.1 billion. This was the first annual decline since the Wuhan virus pandemic. So the question is, why is Beijing cutting back on lending?
All right. So your thoughts on the decrease in lending, increase in imports to the continent of Africa?
Thank you, Joe. Now, this isn't just about China pulling back. It's about China pivoting. Obviously, with the U.S. market becoming increasingly restricted, thanks to the 48% tariffs, the trade barriers under the Trump administration, China is now using Africa as a primary outlet for its manufactured goods. But on the other hand, as was pointed out, it's tightening the belt on high-risk loans. I'm okay with the tightening of the high-risk loans, to be honest, because one drawback of these loans is the complex, very complex debt restructuring that we've seen in countries like Zambia and Ethiopia. And historically, China was Africa's lender of first resort during the 2000s. You know, China has funded the highways, railways, ports that Western banks have ignored. But the real world cost of those decades of lending is now coming due. This year alone, for the first time, African nations are now sending more money back to China in debt repayments. We're talking about $22 billion than they're receiving in new loans, which about $2 billion. So it's like payback time. And that was something that for decades, for years, people were concerned about. What happens when we have to pay back? So I'm very okay with the loans actually being reduced. I'm okay with aid. You see, people have different thoughts on it. They say we need aid, we need loans. Yeah, and look at how that has helped us, right? How has that helped us? But anyway, back to the goods going to China from Africa. My question is to our leaders. Now that African markets are flooded with made in China products, which has always been the case, but now there's even more of a surge, what happens to our products? Where do they go? Are we focusing on enabling manufacturing on the continent so that we have more balance? Can we export more than we import? Can we work on consuming more of our own products? There's a reason China is in Africa. China knows the gem we carry, but do we know the gem we carry?
Absolutely. And I will say, you know, look, one of the things that China has done well has been creating. So when they figure out something works, they pour gasoline on it. So there are cities in China that do very specific things. So certain cities are all about clothes. Other cities are all about electronic goods. And you have factory after factory after factory pumping these things out at low cost because their labor wages have much to be desired. Let's put it that way. And so they are able to pump out a lot of cheap goods and send them elsewhere. Now you're talking about a continent with GDP that and monthly income for many that is much lower than what it is in China. But you have a very high consumer economy on the continent. So to your point, we would love for people to have intercontinental trade, more manufacturing on the continent, and more more buying of our own goods. And then, of course, better selling of our goods internationally. But what I would say is this. One of the things that I found to be an uptick, and this is anecdotal, right? This is based on my personal experience, but, you know, I lived for 4 years on the continent. And of course, I've been going back and forth 3 to 4 times a year, every year since I've come back to the States. And what I find is more and more people have begun businesses selling Chinese goods within the different countries that I go to. People are starting e-commerce businesses. People are starting other types of commerce, buying and selling products. And people are buying more products from China for their own personal use. And I'm talking about products that seem to have a lifespan longer than what we used to say about Chinese goods in the United States. There were many comments we used to make. Now, obviously, if you have a knockoff of, you know, like Apple AirPods or something, they are not going to work the same way Apple AirPods are going to work. But other types of products, things like couches or materials for like drapes and materials for like dressers and furniture, all those kinds of things. I've seen someone furnish their entire house from products purchased in China for about $2,000 to $3,000, where it would have been $5,000 to $10,000 in terms of what they furnished their house with if they had done it from some other countries on the continent or from within the country that they live in. So I must say that there are many people that are going to continue to do this, and I think we need to do a better job of intercontinental trade. But to your point, I do like to see that those loans have decreased tremendously, because at the end of the day, these loans are done by many folks that are in office who leave office, and another generation further down the line will be responsible for repaying those loans, and those loans have come due, and many of those loans are being paid back. And so I'd like us to do more trade to generate income as opposed to getting more loans and more handouts. We'd like to be seeing people shake hands at the table than having a hand out for money. So with that was the China story. Let's move on to the AES. Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso are to build Sahel's first satellite with Russian help. So Vladimir Putin is expanding Russia's presence in the Sahel region by helping the AES build a shared communications satellite. Now, this satellite is designed to operate outside of Western control. The satellite will support border monitoring, secure government communications, and faster responses to terrorist threats, at least according to them. Analysts say the move strengthens Russia's influence as Western powers withdraw from the Sahel region and seeks strategic autonomy. This marks a decisive step in Moscow's partnership with the Alliance of Sahel States, expanding satellite capabilities across the region while consolidating control over critical communications and security infrastructure. That's reported by First Post News. We will play a video from them, and we will have some commentary on the other side.
Is it playing?
Communication satellite, one designed to operate outside Western control, and Russia says it is ready to build it. Burkina Faso's prime minister held talks with Russia's ambassador on launching a Russian-built telecommunications satellite. Reports say the project would serve the Alliance of Sahel States, linking Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger through a single shared platform. Officials say this would not be a national satellite, but rather a shared asset, owned and used collectively by the Alliance for the AES. Analysts say this is a strategic upgrade, as the gains go far beyond technology. It would expand broadband, and mobile connectivity in remote areas where infrastructure is nearly non-existent. It would enable secure, encrypted communications for governments and armed forces. And through remote sensing, it would support border monitoring, surveillance, and disaster response in areas where ground infrastructure barely exists. This is not a sudden move, as it builds on years of quiet coordination between the Sahel states and the Kremlin. In September 2024, ministers from Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso reportedly met officials from Russia's space agency, Roscosmos, in Bamako. Those talks focused on joint telecommunications and surveillance satellites.
All right, so your thoughts on this story, Gloria?
Yes, so the timing of this in the Sahel is, of course, we can't separate that from the fact that the Sahel has taken a total break from France and the United States. And since that happened, Russia has moved in aggressively to fill the vacuum. We just talked about China's, I don't want to use the word dominance, literally, but we just talked about China's, should I call it influence or presence now in Africa? And many times on this platform, we've referenced how countries like Russia, China, I've also mentioned Turkey, you know, with what has been going on in the United States, for instance, with all the tariffs and, you know, certain things that have, certain moves that have been made, you know, what ends up happening is that you open the door for other partners to step in. You know, people see opportunity and they know Africa is a gem. They know that we have all it takes to actually sustain the entire globe. But what with this move that Russia is making, this satellite is going to, you know, provide high-speed internet, mobile phone services, radio, television, broadcasting to remote underdeveloped areas. So I see some good coming out of this. And I think more importantly, this satellite could actually, because one thing the Sahel has been struggling with, unfortunately, has been curbing the presence of militants, you know, in the Sahel. So with this satellite, hopefully they're able to detect where these militants are. There's also mention of natural resource intelligence, where they're able to actually detect mineral reserves. And that way they can manage environmental emergencies that happen due to flooding and droughts that occasionally happen in the Sahel. Ultimately, I hope it does benefit the people. I think that's the most important thing. And we'll keep our eyes out and hopefully our leaders make the right decision in that regard.
Yeah, and I'll say, look, one of the challenges that we see is internet connectivity on the continent. You know, electricity, internet connectivity, these are two things that I think is really holding much of the continent back. You know, we have a lot of very powerful human resources, not just the resources underground, but very smart and innovative people. But I think they're restricted by the limitations of technology and access to light. And so these are the things that the AES is working through mineral deals with and other deals with the East, we'll say the Far East, in order to improve, right? We will see how, you know, the negative impact of this. There's a lot of people, including in that video, stating that it's the Kremlin having more control, et cetera, et cetera. You know, obviously the AES sees it as them having more control of their communications and being able to have encrypted communications between them. You know, many times they have to travel to each other to communicate high-level strategy and things they need to do to curb those insurgents that we're talking about. They're growing in power, in finances, and in weaponry. And the reason why these coups, which people are calling revolutions, have even sustained and have continued and growing support is because of these insurgent militant groups that are in all three of these countries. And so, you know, they put together that joint military pact, the joint defense pact. I think that was in 2024. And this will allow them to be able to better communicate with each other and to be able to coordinate better, to be able to, you know, get rid of these groups that are continuing to terrorize people within their borders. So we will see if that actually, you know, improves their monitoring and their gains on stopping these militant groups. And we will see, of course, if it does improve internet connectivity. You guys might remember for some time, I was going live with African Stream, And one of the challenges we found was the internet connectivity in Burkina Faso. When we would go live, you know, we'd see that there were some challenges sometimes with connectivity. So, you know, we'll see if this helps out in that regard. All right, so moving on, we're going to stay in the AES and with the story on Assimi Goïta and Mali's military leader and his grip, tightening his grip on the country's vital gold industry. And now this comes from First Post News, and this is their reporting. He has placed mining oversight directly under the presidency. We've seen this in other countries as well. A new ministerial level role now controls mining policy, compliance, and reporting powers once held by the Mines Ministry. The move follows a tough year for the sector, with industrial gold output down 23% amid stricter mining rules and major tax dispute with Barrick Gold, which is, if I'm not mistaken, the international gold company that does business there in Mali. Gold accounts for nearly 10% of Mali's GDP and over 70% of exports. So we will play this video from the folks at First Post, and then we'll have some commentary on the other side.
And for our final story, Mali's military leader is strengthening his grip on the country's gold industry, with direct control over the vital sector that struggled in 2025 under strict rules. Mali's interim president, Assimi Goïta, has created a new ministerial level role to oversee the sector and has appointed a former executive of the global Barrick mining company in the position. And legal documents show that the new minister will have powers to supervise mining policy implementation, monitor compliance with the mining code, and review reports submitted by title holders. These responsibilities were all previously handled by the Ministry of Mines. According to a January 19th presidential decree, Hilary Bebian Diarra, an earth science specialist, has been appointed to the role. The Malian national had been named as a special advisor to the presidency during a bitter dispute over Mali's top industrial gold mine with Barrick. In November 2025, Barrick Gold agreed to pay approximately $420 million, resolving a 2-year dispute over taxes. Now, gold in Mali is big business. Analysts say that the sector makes up for nearly 10% of the country's GDP, while it contributes more than 70% of the national export earnings.
All right, so your thoughts on this move by Assimi Goïta, the ruler of Mali, or the interim president of Mali, I should say.
Yes, and you know, when I was just listening to that, it brought to mind the fact that obviously some people would have concerns around military rule, and you know, when the military take over, is it really a democracy anymore? But when we had civilians in power, did we have these sorts of things? Did we get a sense of some of our leaders, I'd say many, you know, being more concerned about us owning and managing our own resources? I mean, the fact that Diarra, who actually used to work with Barrick Gold, was hired speaks volumes. It's so strategic. I think it's such a smart move because now they're able to get insider info on you know, mining on the international scene and things that, I guess, knowledge that we could all use on the continent. But I'm very...
Oh, I think we lost you, Gloria.
It's our resources. Huh?
I think we lost you for a second. I don't know if that was just on my end, but I think we lost you.
Oh, okay. It's, yeah, well, I don't know what was the last thing you heard.
No, you were just saying it was a good strategic move, and then we lost you for about maybe 10 seconds.
Oh, I'm sorry. But it's our resources, so I am for the people. As long as those resources benefit the people, let's go, let's get it. It's our resources, Joe.
Yeah, absolutely. And look,
Barrick Gold is in Canada. We own these resources.
Right. Good point. And so look, you saw that what they said, right? $400 million in a tax dispute was agreed to be paid, which it would not have been done under any other leadership, because that dispute had been there under previous leadership. And you see that this is the kind of thing that people were saying, this is not an ordinary coup, this is a revolution, because the people of the country support it, because you have these kinds of things. And you see, when things are not going well, a swift move was made to improve it. Exports were down 23%. A swift move was made to see if they could correct that. So we will see how this turns out. But so far, since Assimi Goïta has taken control of the country, we've seen them have some of the biggest swings in economic improvement and made a lot of changes to these trade deals and mineral deals that they've had with Europe and Canada. And it's all had positive benefits and outcomes for the country of Mali. To be honest with you, a lot of what they've done can be really a model for other countries on the continent, specifically in West Africa, who have minerals underground. All right, so now moving on to the next story. We are a little bit over time, but I think I have some time today, so I do want to get through some of the rest of these stories. Now, we have reported on this previously. Rwanda had been in discussions with the United States to take migrants, third-party country migrants. They had previously been in discussions with the UK. And you might remember we discussed that the UK actually backed out of that deal. If I remember correctly, it was 2 prime ministers ago, where the former prime minister backed out under pressure from the country, and I'm forgetting his name because they run through so many prime ministers. I'm forgetting their names. But yeah, so he was the of Indian descent, if I remember correctly. And he, there's a picture of he and Kagame shaking hands and talking about this agreement, and there was pressure to get rid of this particular plan. So Rwanda is now suing the UK over the scrapped asylum seeker deal, and they seek compensation because a big part of that deal was that the UK was going to compensate Rwanda for taking these third-party country migrants. And so since scrapping that deal, Rwanda is asking for that money. So diplomatic tensions between Kigali and London have escalated significantly as Rwanda launches former arbitration proceedings against the United Kingdom over the now scrapped migrant deportation deal. This is being reported by First Post News. Filed at the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague, the lawsuit accuses the UK government of failing to honor financial commitments outlined in the 2022 agreement brokered by former Prime Minister, and is actually before the Prime Minister I mentioned. It was actually with Boris Johnson in 2022.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
and Rishi Sunak, even I had to look up the name because, like as you said, they've had so many prime ministers, but I thought about Boris Johnson too.
Yeah, so it was Boris Johnson, and it was not the Prime Minister of Indian descent whose name is now still escaping me, but
Rishi Sunak.
Sorry, what was his name again?
Rishi Sunak.
Yes, okay, there you go, Rishi Sunak. Although Prime Minister Keir Starmer's Labour government declared the scheme dead and buried following their 2024 election victory, labeling it a waste of taxpayer money, Rwanda contends that the UK did not follow former termination protocols. So consequently, Kigali is seeking approximately $68.9 million in outstanding payments that were scheduled for 2025 and 2026. So we'll play some video from First Post News and we'll have some commentary on the other side.
Moving on now to Rwanda. The East African country has sued the United Kingdom over the scrapped migrant deal. Kigali has accused London of not making promised payments. Though the deal was scrapped in 2024, it took Rwanda nearly 2 years to take legal action against the UK. The action is delayed but significant. What was the asylum seeker deal? Why was it scrapped? And what does Rwanda want from the UK now? Well, let's break it down. Back in 2022, former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson brokered the asylum seeker deal. Under the agreement, Rwanda was supposed to receive undocumented migrants who had arrived in the UK on small boats. The aim was to deter illegal migration in the UK, but the deal faced a string of legal challenges. In November 2023, the UK Supreme Court ruled that the deal was illegal under international law. The court said Rwanda was not a safe destination and it could pose a threat to life of the deportees sent there. London could only send 4 migrants to detention centres in Rwanda. Then came the 2024 general elections. The Labour Party won, and as promised, Keir Starmer scrapped the deal and declared it dead and buried. Starmer labelled the deal as a failure and said that it had wasted taxpayers' money and announced that no further payments would be made to Rwanda.
Your thoughts on Rwanda suing the UK for non-payment on these?
Boy, did I not know this day would ever come, because I think the irony is so rich. When I saw this story, as you know, I was like, what? Because for over 2 years, the UK government has spent millions of pounds and all this political capital trying to convince its own courts and the international community that Rwanda was a safe and reliable partner for human rights and migration. We have shared our thoughts on all these stories of migrants, being sent to Africa, to these countries that are supposed to be, is it third party they call them? But now the same Rwanda that's supposed to be a safe partner is now taking the UK to court. So basically what Rwanda is doing is it's using the very rule of law, the same international standards that the UK championed. Now it's using that to demand more money from the UK for a scheme that never actually fully launched. And to date, the UK has paid Rwanda roughly 290 million pounds, yet only 4 people were sent over to Rwanda. And those four people actually went voluntarily. So now Rwanda is suing for an additional 100 million pounds in scheduled payments for 2025 and 2026, arguing that the UK cannot stop paying just because it decided to change its mind about the policy. And one of Rwanda's 3 claims in the lawsuit is that the UK breached the treaty by refusing to resettle vulnerable refugees from Rwanda in the UK. And this was originally framed as the UK helping Rwanda, but now Rwanda is suing the UK again for failing to take people out of Rwanda. It's quite confusing, but I think it's extremely ironic and interesting.
It is interesting. We talked about this. I was never a big fan of this third-party country migration schemes. I'm not a big fan of them, generally because I think, first of all, many times they're getting sent back to their country of origin that they were claiming or seeking asylum from to begin with. That's one. And then 2, them resettling in that new third-party country is unsettling many times because there are no ties to that country. They had no plans of being there. And those countries don't always have plans for them. It's just another financial scheme by many of these countries. Now, in this particular case, I find it interesting because there was a lot of pushback on the continent as well. Not the same kind of pushback there was in the UK, which had them scrapping it to begin with, especially because the Labour Party is now in power, and they finally just outwardly said they're no longer going to do it. I think Keir Starmer kind of kept it in the background, didn't really speak to it too much. Sorry, I'm saying Keir Starmer. Rishi Sunak didn't speak to it too much in the later part of his prime ministership. And so there was always a potential for it to be back on the table. But now that the Labour Party is in power, which seems to be like the more liberal party sort of in the UK, they would side with the folks that would say that they don't agree with this particular policy and this deal. So it'll be interesting to see if, in fact, they're able to get that money. We will watch closely and you'll let you know. Okay, we got some headlines from around Africa that we want to run through briefly. One of which I think we can go through is you and I spoke about talking through Uganda's parliament, right? And there were some questions, conversations, thoughts from those in the audience. And some mentions, and I was sent this by some folks that I know in in the who are big on African news, and they wanted me to share this with the world and with the world, with those who watch. I don't know if we're going to say that's the world, but so really quickly, just to illustrate the roles in Museveni's cabinet in Uganda, for those who are wondering, let me share what that looks like. So let's do that. Let's just jump right into it. I don't know if you can see this. It is probably really hard to see. So let me make this 200. Here we go. So as we saw, are you able to see this, Gloria, from your end?
Well, you know, it's a little tiny. Can it be bigger?
Yes, it can be. Let's go to 300. Oh, it doesn't allow me to go to 300.
More importantly, can you all see this? Maybe Joe will just
thumbs up if you guys can see it. If not, we can read through it and just tell you. It's rather lengthy, so there's a lot to talk about. I think 200 is the max. So I'll just read it. So Uganda reelected 86-year-old president, 40 years in power, just ended the election to continue ruling them. That's what these people are saying. So the Minister of Education is his wife, according to this. The chief of Uganda's defense forces is his son, which we do know to be true. Chief General Army Commander is also his son, according to this. Presidential advisor and former minister, according to this, is his brother. The Minister of Animal Industry, according to this, is his brother. Senior presidential advisor on defense is his stepbrother, according to this. Administrator at the State House is his sister-in-law. Former Deputy Inspector General Police, his brother. Military ADS commander, cousin of his wife. Private Secretary in Education and Social Services, his brother. Foreign Minister of Foreign Affairs, father-in-law to Museveni's son. So his son's wife's father. Special Forces Command's Intelligence Director, husband to his daughter. Husband to the father-in-law of one of his children.
Is the family tree getting confusing, Joe?
Yeah, I need somebody to draw it for me. Minister of National Security, wife's brother. Presidential Assistant of the African Growth Opportunity Act. So AGOA is the wife's brother. Senior Presidential Advisor on Local Government, the wife's brother. Senior Military Officer, married to a cousin of Museveni's wife. Senior Presidential Advisor, married to a cousin of Museveni's wife. Under Secretary for Finance Administration at the State House, cousins of Museveni's wife. A Managing Director of Cotton Development Authority, cousin of Museveni's wife. Presidential Assistant in charge of the State House, his daughter. Presidential Advisor on Veterinary issues, his nephew. So that is just what was sent to me. Now you guys can go fact check this and double check it, but at the very least, what I do know for sure is this one is true, because this gentleman here was responsible for Bobby Wine's bodyguard being kidnapped. Was it last year or was it the year before? So we know for sure this is definitely true. But this is coming from some pretty reputable sources who've done the research. So Jade is saying, so they are starting a dynasty. So it seems it is more of a royal family in country than in actual democracy, as they they claim. Okay, so news from around the continent beyond that.
I'm laughing because it's so laughable.
Yes.
It's not funny though. It's actually extremely hurtful what these people have done. I mean, from the controversy with the election, obviously he thinks he's going to surround himself by people who he can trust, because who else is there left to trust in the whole country? Mm-hmm. But therein lies the problem with our continent. That's one of the major reasons Africa is exactly where it is. Don't worry, Ugandans. Help is on the way. Your day of reckoning, that day of reckoning is coming. It is what it is. I'm not making threats. I'm just saying these things never. I mean, at the very least, your legacy is tarnished. So.
Yes. I won't say much more on that because I do want to go to Uganda one day. So I will say South African military defies Ramaphosa's orders twice in 6 months. We didn't get a chance to talk about the story over 2 weeks, but do you have some high-level notes that you want to share with the group on this one with Ramaphosa and the BRICS exercises?
I honestly, I think we already covered this, didn't we? Oh, we didn't get to talk about this?
No, we never got a chance to talk about it. So, and I know one of the stories was that Ramaphosa's head of military made some statements about Iran and some other things. He's seems like he's been going rogue, according to Ramaphosa, and the way he's been describing not knowing what his military leader is going to be saying. And then there was some we never got around to the story, but there was some military exercises off the coast of South Africa as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts or anything to say on that?
I'm sorry. I guess I had some things to say about it the last time, but I guess we'll just, I mean, if anything, it's only highlighting how the SANDF is increasingly aligning itself with a global South security agenda independent of Ramaphosa's foreign policy. But I guess we'll just keep our eyes out on this one.
Yeah, we'll keep our eyes out on that. Somaliland's president holds investment talks with the son of the president of the United States at Davos. Any thoughts on that?
No surprise there.
You know, and Davos is that's what you go to Davos for, is to talk about investments. Exactly. Egyptian lawmakers are working to limit children's exposure on digital chaos of social media. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, obviously, the first thing that comes to mind, well, I say yay for the children and good for parents, but I also hope it's not a tool for censorship, you know, in the name of child protection. But we'll keep our eyes out on that one too.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. I think one of the things that has to be done is it has to be done across the board. You know, children today, many times, or not even today, always, judge themselves based on others, right? And they're trying to fit in, understand the social order, social constructs, etc. That's why something that might seem small to us seems so big to them, because they're still understanding who they are and growing in the social construct. And so this is one of those things that has exacerbated bullying and all other kinds of depression, etc. And so if, in fact, this is done across the board, I think this is going to be a benefit to all society moving forward. If you guys haven't noticed, if you know anybody Generation Alpha or even younger Gen Zs, they have a hard time communicating in person with actual humans. And this is something I've been speaking to my nephew a lot about, because he is now in the work world. And luckily, his mother didn't have him on the phone at all times growing up. But he has talked about how his friends cannot talk to the opposite sex or the same sex, if that's what they're into. They just have issues communicating in general. And even in small groups with each other, they prefer to communicate via text. And even sometimes they will communicate with each other in the same vicinity via text versus in person. So I think there are many challenges and many problems with having children having access to social media and devices at all times. It should, in my opinion, they should be used for emergency use only. Nigerian soldiers face trial for alleged Tinubu coup plan. Thoughts on that?
Thoughts. I've seen a lot of people say, or some people say, oh, wow. So now you're actually admitting that there was an attempt. Because in the past, you know, there have been rumors of coup attempts and the government says, oh, no, there's no such thing. So with this happening, people think it's actually the government finally admitting. And that comes in cases where, you know, people are just displeased. You know, if people are not happy, I'm not saying I am for or against coup attempts. I'm just saying that you will have cases, there will be rumors, there will be things actually happening. I think the most important thing, and perhaps this could be maybe a moment for the government to reflect and say, oh, perhaps the people are indeed dissatisfied, which, you know, is very obvious. Anyone can see it. But maybe this will be some kind of wake-up call. Doesn't look like it. If anything, it's more of I'm clamping down on whoever dares oppose me. And it's not just the military. It's happened with even civilians, peaceful protesters, etc. I could go on and on. So I guess they're just yet again they're more focused on securing their place in power as opposed to actually making sure that the people happy and not disgruntled enough to want to make moves like this.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then look, you said it. I mean, look, there's you see it's happened in 4 other countries in West Africa. We talk about the AES a lot, but it also happened in Guinea as well. There were some people in the chat that felt like Guinea should be added to the AES. I think there are reasons why they haven't. That's a conversation for another time. As someone who spends a lot of time in a country that borders Guinea, we can talk about that separately. I don't want to get into that. There's some shaky, muddy waters there, so I won't. But anyway, so those are the stories and the headlines from around the continent. If you want to read into those more, the links are in the description, or at least the titles of those stories are there, so you can copy and paste. If you're watching on Facebook, they don't allow that many links, so you can just copy and paste the headline into Google and or YouTube, and you can find those stories if you want to look into it more. Any final words for the audience, Gloria, before we go?
So many wonderful comments. Thank you all so much for interacting with us. We appreciate you. You tuning in actually encourages us to keep going. So this moment is for you. I'm dedicating this entire moment to you, and thank you. Mwah.
There it is. And I would say, yes, thank you to those who stay on and engage for sure. Listen, this has been an hour and 20-something minute live stream, and you guys have been very engaged from the beginning. That just speaks to the audience and, how you guys all think and what you guys find important. So if you have thoughts on stories, please reach out to us. For me, you can email me. My email is authenticafricanlife@gmail.com. For Gloria, you can DM her on her Instagram at the Gloria Ayo. It's right there on screen. Make sure you follow all and subscribe to all of our channels, platforms, etc. Gloria is on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, etc. So make sure you follow her everywhere. Make sure if you're from her side, you come over and follow Authentic African. Make sure you also share this with anybody who wants to know about what's happening on the continent, and they want to hear from some folks who spent significant amount of time there. And with that, I want to thank you guys all for watching. We'll see you guys all again the week after next. We won't be able to go live next Thursday unless it's on another day, which I have to talk to Gloria about because I forgot to mention that to her earlier. So thank you guys all for watching. We will see you guys all soon. Bye, guys.
Bye.